Major companies across the country are announcing layoffs in large numbers, and nearly 950,000 jobs have been cut off this year alone.
Amazon announced mass layoffs today. It is cutting 14,000 corporate jobs as it prepares for the arrival of AI technology.
Target is preparing to cut 1,800 corporate jobs. That's about 8% of its corporate workforce.
Got breaking news this morning. Massive job cuts at Amazon. Overnight, the company announcing it'll eliminate approximately 14,000 roles. This is the largest corporate layoff of the year, one of the largest in Amazon's history.
153,074 job cuts announced for October, the highest since 2003 for the month. And it's a 183% increase from September, 175% over the last year. For 2025, we're up 65% in terms of job cuts over 2024. It's the most year-to-date cuts since COVID in 2020, which of course screws up all the graphs.
America is facing a storm of layoffs from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, thousands losing their jobs every single week. But while the U.S. economy trembles, something very different is happening on the other side of the world. In Africa, investment is surging. New factories are rising. Foreign companies are moving in, and for once, the headlines say it all. Africa is quietly winning. From Nairobi to Lagos, Accra to Addis, nations once written off are now rewriting the global economy's rules. While America cuts jobs, Africa's creating them. The world's economic center is shifting, and this time Africa's holding the pen. Stay tuned, because this story isn't just about America's fall. It's about Africa's rise. The year opens with headlines screaming one thing: layoffs. From Silicon Valley tech giants to Wall Street banks, America's corporate landscape looks like a battlefield. Tens of thousands of jobs wiped out overnight. Startups once worth billions quietly shutting down. Even the titans Amazon, Google, Meta, Tesla are trimming the fat. The so-called land of opportunity suddenly looks unstable. But this isn't just another economic downturn. This is a shift, a global rebalancing of where wealth, labor, and innovation live. Because while America is laying off its workforce to cut costs, other regions are preparing to collect what the U.S. is leaving behind. And no region is more surprising in that story than Africa. Across the Atlantic, something remarkable is happening quietly, strategically, and fast. Africa, the continent once dismissed as developing, is developing faster than anyone expected. Factories are popping up in Nigeria and Kenya, car assembly lines in Morocco, gigantic ports expanding in Djibouti and Tanzania, solar power plants transforming deserts into energy hubs. Foreign investments, particularly from Asia and the Middle East, are flowing in like never before. While the West debates politics, Africa is negotiating trade. In 2024 alone, over $100 billion in foreign direct investment was pledged to African infrastructure and manufacturing projects. Not just aid, real business deals. Japan's automakers, facing rising costs and trade wars in the U.S., are quietly moving production south to Africa. Toyota, Honda, and Nissan are already building new assembly plants. Why? Labor is cheaper, governments are eager, and Africa is sitting on something far more valuable than low-wages resources. Copper in Zambia, cobalt in the Dar Sea, lithium in Zimbabwe, rare earths in Namibia. The minerals every tech company needs for EVs, AI chips, and smartphones. Africa owns them all. The 20th century belonged to the West. But the 21st? It's being written by whoever controls supply chains, and right now those chains are shifting. America once dominated the global economy by exporting ideas, tech, and culture. But now even innovation is going borderless. African startups are booming, from fintech in Lagos to green tech in Nairobi. Flutterwave, Andela, Jumia, companies that started in Africa are now trading globally, attracting billions in foreign capital. While U.S. venture funds slow down, African innovation accelerates. The numbers speak for themselves. Over $6 billion in venture capital flowed into African startups last year, a tenfold increase from just a decade ago. And more than 60% of that came from outside Africa, especially Asia and the Middle East. It's no longer about charity, it's about opportunity. When America sneezes, the world catches a cold, that's what economists used to say. But not anymore. The U.S. layoffs that began as a tech correction are now bleeding into manufacturing, logistics, and finance. The problem? American companies built their success on cheap global labor and endless consumer demand. Now both are fading. Consumers are tightening their wallets. Interest rates are high. Energy costs are rising. And inflation has become the silent killer of the American middle class. So, corporations respond the only way they know: by cutting jobs. But here's the twist. Every job cut in America is creating a new opportunity somewhere else. Factories shut down in Michigan. A new one opens in Morocco. Tech workers laid off in California. African developers are taking those outsourced contracts for half the cost. The world is rebalancing and Africa is catching the wind at the perfect moment. For decades, Africa's story was told by others through poverty, conflict, or corruption. But that narrative no longer fits. Today's Africa is young with a median age of just 19. It's digital with one of the fastest growing mobile and internet adoption rates in the world, and it's connected through new trade corridors, linking east, west, and south. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfTA, the largest trade zone on Earth by population, is already reshaping regional economies. It's staring down the old colonial borders and building new ones based on commerce, not conflict. Now, companies from Asia and the Middle East are using Africa as their launchpad, not just to extract raw materials, but to manufacture, innovate, and export. Think about it: Ethiopia assembling electric buses for export, South Africa shipping cars to Europe, Kenya leading Africa's green tech revolution, Nigeria's fintech startups serving millions across the continent. This is the Africa the world wasn't expecting: confident, capable, and competitive. Meanwhile, in Washington, the conversation still sounds outdated. Politicians are debating tax cuts, protectionism, and whether China's to blame for everything. But here's the uncomfortable truth. While America focuses on who to blame, other nations focus on how to win. China saw this opportunity years ago, investing heavily in African infrastructure. Now Japan and South Korea are following. Even European companies, tired of high energy costs and overregulation, are moving operations south. The US, still stuck arguing about tariffs. Africa isn't waiting for permission. It's building highways, ports, and digital networks that will make it the next manufacturing and tech hub of the global south.
And the biggest irony? Many of the American companies laying off workers today will soon return, not to hire in New York or Chicago, but in Nairobi and Accra. Behind the data and deals are real people. In Detroit, a factory worker packs up after 20 years, his job automated, outsourced, or simply erased. But in Durban, a young engineer starts his first day at a new assembly line building the same cars that once rolled out of America. In California, a laid-off software developer updates his. In Lagos, a 23-year-old coder logs in to deliver a contract for that same U.S. company remotely. The shift isn't just economic, it's emotional. The idea that the American dream is slipping, and the African dream is quietly awakening. What happens when a continent that's been written off for centuries suddenly starts to rise? The global order shakes, trade routes change, currencies shift, diplomatic alliances realign. As Africa grows stronger, it starts negotiating from a position of power, no longer begging for aid, but demanding fair partnerships. Already, African nations are forming new blocs, working with BRICS, negotiating energy deals in local currencies, and building defense and tech alliances that bypass the dollar. For the first time, Africa isn't reacting to global change, it's driving it. Every empire falls the same way, slowly, then suddenly, Rome lost its grip, not because of one war, but because others learned how to play the game better. America's layoffs are a symptom of something deeper: an economy that prioritized short-term profit over long-term vision, a system that forgot how to build and learned only how to buy. Africa, on the other hand, is in its building phase, hungry, united, and ambitious. If the U.S. doesn't adapt, the Made in America label may soon be replaced by Made in Africa. You can feel it in the streets of Accra, Nairobi, Johannesburg, a new kind of confidence. Young people launching businesses, developers coding through the night, and governments daring to think globally. Africa's biggest resource isn't oil or minerals, it's momentum. The same drive that built Silicon Valley in the 1980s is now alive in Africa and the world's investors. They see it. While America cuts costs, Africa is creating value. While America closes factories, Africa opens them. While America argues, Africa acts. History doesn't ask for permission before it changes direction. Right now, before our eyes, that change is underway. The global economy is being rewritten and Africa is writing the new chapter. It won't happen overnight. There will be challenges: corruption, infrastructure gaps, political instability. But momentum is a powerful thing, and once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop. America's layoffs aren't just numbers, they're signals. Signals that the old world order is fading and a new one is taking shape. One where the factories hum in Africa, where trade flows through African ports, where innovation sparks from African minds. So while the headlines scream recession in America, the real story is happening elsewhere. In the noise of layoffs and bankruptcies, Africa's quiet growth might be the most important economic story of the decade, because this isn't charity, it's not luck, it's strategy. And as the dust settles, one fact will remain: America's shock became Africa's opportunity. The balance is shifting. the world is watching, and Africa at last is winning. Every empire has a moment when it realizes the world has changed. For America, that moment isn't a war, a collapse, or a revolution, it's a spreadsheet, a quarterly report showing losses, a list of layoffs that doesn't stop scrolling, a map of factories that have gone dark. It's not thunder that ends an era, it's silence. And, in that silence, new voices are rising. Across the Atlantic, in the markets of Lagos, the ports of Mombasa, and the skylines of Kigali, a new rhythm is beating the sound of creation. While American boardrooms discuss cost-cutting, African entrepreneurs are discussing expansion. While U.S. workers wonder where the next paycheck will come from, African engineers are wondering where the next export deal will land. The torch isn't being stolen, it's being dropped, and Africa is simply the one brave enough to pick it up. Economic power doesn't disappear. It relocates. The world is built on cycles where one region's decline fuels another's ascent. Europe industrialized, then America led, then Asia rose, and now Africa is entering that same current. In trade offices from Cairo to Cape Town, leaders are planning the next 20 years. They're talking less about aid and more about sovereignty. Not how can we attract charity, but how can we own production? That mindset shift is everything, because the wealth of nations isn't only about money, it's about control. Who controls supply chains? Who controls resources? Who controls the future of labor? And slowly, Africa is claiming all three. The copper powering electric cars, the lithium running smartphones, the cobalt in every modern battery, they all trace their origin back to African soil. For decades, Africa exported raw materials and imported poverty. Now it's learning to refine, to manufacture, to profit. That's not just growth, that's evolution. Meanwhile, America is facing a hangover from decades of overconfidence. Its corporations chased quarterly profits instead of long-term security. Its leaders prioritized stock prices over skill development, and the system became addicted to the idea that cheap global labor would always be there. But when wages rose in Asia and politics fractured trade, the cracks began to show. Automation was supposed to save costs, instead, it erased jobs. Outsourcing was supposed to build wealth, instead, it hollowed industries. Now, the nation that once set the rules of capitalism is discovering that those same rules can work against it, because capitalism rewards whoever builds the future, not whoever built the past. The tragedy is, America still has the talent, the infrastructure, and the innovation. What it lost was the hunger. And that's exactly what Africa has now: hunger. The hunger that built empires, wrote new systems, and rewired the world. Half of Africa's population is under the age of 25. That's not just a statistic, it's a revolution waiting to unfold. A continent where nearly 1 billion people are entering the workforce in the next 2 decades. A generation that doesn't see Africa as a victim, but as a player. They're fluent in code, in commerce, in connection. They're not waiting for Silicon Valley, they're building their own, from fintech apps in Nigeria to AI labs in Rwanda. This generation isn't asking for opportunity, it's creating it. And here's the secret the world is slowly realizing. In a digital economy, youth is currency, energy is wealth, imagination is GDP. America's average worker is 38, Africa's is 19. That's the kind of demographic advantage you can't print with a stimulus package. This is why investors are paying attention. This is why world leaders are flying into African capitals every month. Because whoever invests in Africa's youth today owns the world's future tomorrow. For centuries, Africa's story was told through someone else's lens: colonial records, charity campaigns, foreign media. But now, the narrative is being rewritten from within. African journalists, filmmakers, economists, and innovators are shaping how the world sees the continent. When the world's headlines say Africa is winning, it's not because outsiders said so, it's because Africans made it true. And that matters, because image is power. The perception of strength attracts real strength. The perception of weakness invites exploitation. Africa is learning that the way it tells its story determines how the world trades with it. No more pity, no more third world, just the next world. If there's one lesson in all of this, it's simple. The global economy rewards movement, not maintenance. Those who adapt win. Those who cling lose. America is discovering that success doesn't last forever, and Africa is proving that struggle doesn't last forever either. Both can learn from each other. America can rediscover the drive that made it great. Africa can avoid the arrogance that once brought others down, because history isn't just repeating, it's rotating. Today, it's Africa's turn to rise. tomorrow, who knows? The point is, the world keeps moving, and in this round, the motion favors Africa. To America, the warning is clear. Innovation doesn't belong to a flag. It belongs to whoever fights for it. The next wave of billion-dollar ideas might come from Nairobi, not New York. The next major auto hub could be Johannesburg, not Detroit. And the next global influencer in finance, tech, or energy might be African-born. To Africa, the promise is even clearer. Don't repeat the mistakes of the old world. Don't trade independence for quick capital. Don't let corruption or division steal the future again, because the window is open now, but it won't stay open forever. The rest of the world is watching, waiting to see whether Africa's rise becomes a revolution, or just another moment in the cycle. This time, it must be different. Close your eyes and picture the global map 20 years from now. Where will the world's factories be? Where will the new financial centers rise? Where will young people dream of moving to build their futures? Chances are, many of those answers will point south, to African megacities glowing with innovation, to renewable energy corridors stretching from the Sahara to the Cape, to digital highways connecting rural towns to global markets. The map is changing, and for the first time in centuries, Africa is not on the margins, it's in the middle. Think about what that means. For every young African who grew up being told you can't, this is proof that you can. For every American worker wondering what happened to us, this is a reminder that greatness requires renewal. The global economy isn't a zero-sum game. Africa's gain isn't America's permanent loss. It's a reshuffle, a new equilibrium. The world is big enough for multiple success stories. But right now, the spotlight belongs to Africa, because Africa earned it, and maybe, just maybe, that's good for everyone. A balanced world is a safer world. A prosperous Africa means new markets, new ideas, new hope. So as America counts its layoffs, Africa counts its opportunities. As one chapter closes, another begins written. Not in Washington, but in Nairobi, Lagos, Addis Ababa, and beyond. This isn't the end of American leadership, it is the expansion of global leadership, the proof that progress doesn't belong to one nation. It belongs to anyone willing to build it. The world is watching Africa's rise, some with fear, others with fascination. But the truth is, this is what progress looks like: uneven, unpredictable, unstoppable. And when the historians of tomorrow write about this decade, they want to call it the age of layoffs. They'll call it the moment Africa began to win. So while headlines scream crisis in America, remember, every end is someone else's beginning. The winds have shifted, and the sails are set. The question isn't whether Africa can lead. It's whether the world is ready to follow. This is not a story of collapse, it's a story of transformation, and Africa is at the center of it.